The morning skies were clear, but the peace on Earth was about to shatter. It all began when strange signals were detected in space signals that didn't belong to any known species. The world's top scientists gathered in secret, analyzing the data that came from beyond the stars. What they found sent chills down their spines. There was an incoming fleet, massive in size, heading straight for Earth. No one knew where it came from, or why it was heading to their home. But one thing was clear: Earth was in danger. The humans tried to communicate with the unknown fleet, sending out every kind of message they could, but the silence from the invaders was deafening. Days turned into weeks, and the fleet only got closer. Nations across the globe started to panic, unsure of what to do. Military forces were put on high alert, but the invaders never made contact. They just kept coming. At first, many people refused to believe the reports. Some thought it was a hoax. Others claimed the government was trying to stir up fear. But the truth was undeniable. The fleet was real. It was out there, growing larger. With every passing day, the silence from the invaders was terrifying. Why hadn't they spoken to the humans yet? Was it a trick, or was it the calm before the storm? One by one, the leaders of Earth came together in secret. The United Nations called for an emergency meeting, bringing together the most powerful nations. The conversation was grave. A strategy needed to be formed. But the question was, what could they do? The invaders were coming from a galaxy far away. No one had ever seen ships like theirs. The technology alone was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. No weapon on Earth could possibly match the firepower of these unknown forces. Yet, humanity had something the invaders didn't expect: willpower. The humans weren't about to give up without a fight. A plan was quickly formed. While world leaders and military experts debated and strategized, ordinary people across the globe watched the skies with growing anxiety. They knew something was coming, but they didn't know what or when. All they could do was wait, hoping the mysterious invaders would turn away before it was too late. Meanwhile, the invaders continued their approach, and humanity was left with little time to prepare. Rumors spread that the invaders had a vast armada ready to wipe out entire civilizations. Fear ran deep in the streets. People whispered that the invaders were coming to take over, to conquer, to destroy. It was hard to keep calm with the unknown hanging over them. They were helpless. The world's top engineers and scientists worked day and night, trying to create weapons capable of defending Earth. Satellites were deployed to scan the invaders' ships, gathering every bit of information they could. The invaders' ships were designed to withstand nearly anything. The humans could barely scratch the surface of their armor with their most powerful weapons. But even as the darkness of uncertainty grew, there was a glimmer of hope. The invaders had not attacked yet. Why? What were they waiting for? Days passed. The fleet grew larger in the sky, casting shadows over the Earth. People began to gather in large groups, praying for protection. In cities, streets were lined with signs of panic. Shelves and stores were emptied. People prepared for the worst, but there was no sign of the invaders making a move. All humanity could do was watch. The tension was unbearable. And then, just when it seemed like the calm before the storm would never end, the first real sign of action came. It wasn't a warship firing or an explosion shaking the ground. No, it was something far more terrifying. The invaders sent a single message to Earth. It was short, direct, and chilling. We come for your resources. Your world will be ours. It was a declaration of war. This message shook the world to its core. The invaders had no interest in peace or negotiation. They had come to take Earth, and there was no going back. In an instant, all the uncertainty turned into a harsh reality. Humanity was facing a force beyond anything they could imagine. The warnings were real. Earth was not prepared for what was coming, and now there was no choice but to fight. The world's leaders rushed to make decisions, but it was already too late. The invaders had set their sights on Earth, and there was no turning back. The message they had received sent a wave of panic through the ranks of Earth's forces. Despite the preparation and the technology they had worked so hard to develop, the humans realized that they were outmatched, but something inside them refused to accept defeat. This would not be the end, as the invaders' fleet continued its journey to Earth. Humanity had one choice left: to face the invaders head-on, with everything they had. The stakes were high, and time was running out. If they did nothing, Earth would fall, but if they fought, they risked losing everything. Yet, there was no other option. Humans were ready to defend their home. As the first invader ship entered Earth's atmosphere, humans braced for impact. The countdown had begun, and the world waited with bated breath for the inevitable conflict to begin. The invaders had warned them. Now they would pay the price for underestimating humanity. The invaders wasted no time. As their enormous fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, their warships loomed overhead like dark, menacing clouds. Humanity, still reeling from the shock of their first message, had no choice but to act. The warning was clear: fight or perish. There was no turning back now. In every major city, emergency sirens echoed through the streets. People rushed to their homes, huddled together in fear, while governments scrambled to deploy their remaining defenses. Nations had put aside their differences, but the question on everyone's mind was the same: could humanity stand a chance against such overwhelming force? The first wave of invaders struck with terrifying precision. Ships as large as mountains landed across Earth's most strategic locations. Cities like New York, Beijing, and London were targeted for their global importance. The invaders' ships unleashed an array of weapons, sending explosions and fireballs across the landscape. Buildings crumbled, streets were torn apart, and chaos reigned. But the humans were not as defenseless as they seemed. After years of secret development, humanity had a powerful weapon of its own, something the invaders never expected. They called it the Defiant, a massive space station hidden on the far side of the moon. It had been built in secrecy, designed with technology gleaned from a mysterious crash site found years earlier. The station housed advanced weaponry capable of matching the invaders' own arsenal, and now it was time to unleash it. The moment came as the invaders' ships descended, their shields shimmering in the atmosphere. Earth's forces launched the Defiant's first salvo. A massive laser beam, brighter than the sun, shot out from the station and struck one of the lead ships, causing it to explode in a blinding flash. The sight of the invaders' flagship being torn apart in seconds sent shockwaves through their fleet. For the first time, they realized the humans were not helpless. But the invaders, despite their surprise, were not deterred. They retaliated with an unrelenting fury. Dozens of ships unleashed devastating weaponry, planetary lasers that could melt entire cities in a single shot. Earth's defense systems, though powerful, were nothing compared to the might of the invaders' technology. The humans fought back bravely, but the invaders' ships were nearly invulnerable. It was as though the more humanity tried to strike back, the more the invaders adapted and countered with even greater force. The battle raged on, but humanity refused to give in. The unexpected success of the Defiant boosted their morale. They were not as outmatched as they had thought. A new plan was formed. Instead of trying to destroy the invaders outright, humanity would use their knowledge of the invaders' weaknesses, their advanced technology, and their sheer determination to stall the invaders' advance long enough to give them a fighting chance. Across the world, human resistance forces began to regroup. Fighters took to the skies, using guerrilla tactics to target smaller ships. Soldiers on the ground were armed with whatever weapons they could find, using hit-and-run tactics to slow down the invaders. It was a desperate, disorganized fight, but it was a fight nonetheless. In the chaos of battle, something unexpected happened. The invaders had underestimated the resilience of humanity. They had expected a quick, easy conquest, but Earth's people fought back with everything they had. They had more than technology on their side. They had an unbreakable will to survive. The invaders' commander, watching the battlefield unfold from his flagship, began to question his orders. He had been told that the humans would cower, that their technology would be nothing against his superior forces. Yet, here they were, pushing back against the invaders with a ferocity he hadn't anticipated. The humans' defiance seemed to spark something in him. A thought began to form, a thought that perhaps they had made a mistake. He had expected an easy victory. He hadn't prepared for this. Humans were unpredictable, and their spirit was unyielding. The first strike was supposed to be the beginning of humanity's downfall, but instead, it had turned into a fierce resistance. As the battle continued, the invaders began to realize that this wasn't going to be the quick victory they had imagined. The humans were fighting with everything they had, and with each passing minute, the invaders' confidence began to wane. This would not be a simple conquest. They had underestimated Earth, and that would be their greatest mistake. Humanity had warned them, and now the invaders were learning just how costly their ignorance would be. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and the invaders would soon discover that the true strength of humanity wasn't in their technology, but in their unbreakable will to protect their home. As the days turned into weeks, the battle continued with no clear victor in sight. The invaders' fleets were formidable, their weapons capable of wiping entire cities off the map in seconds. Yet, despite their overwhelming firepower, humanity had proven to be far more resilient than they had anticipated. Every attack was met with defiance, and Earth's resistance forces kept finding ways to slow the invaders' relentless advance. Behind the front lines, something extraordinary was happening. The humans had something the invaders didn't expect, an unwavering sense of unity and purpose. While their military forces scrambled to hold back the invaders, scientists, engineers, and everyday people were working together in hidden labs, basements, and underground bunkers, developing new weapons and technologies. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars, imagining what lay beyond their world. But it was in their darkest hour that they unlocked the true potential of their curiosity and innovation. Hidden beneath the surface of Earth were technologies that the invaders had never encountered. Some of them were relics of a forgotten, ancient knowledge preserved by a select few. Others were the fruits of mankind's latest breakthroughs, born out of necessity and desperation. One such invention was the hypercharge weapon, an energy-based cannon designed to harness Earth's magnetic fields and amplify energy to catastrophic levels. Though it had been initially deemed too unstable to deploy, humanity's engineers found a way to perfect it just in time. The first test of the hypercharged weapon was a resounding success. A massive bolt of energy shot out from the cannon, obliterating an entire invader warship in the blink of an eye. The hypercharged weapon became Earth's new hope. Across the globe, scientists worked tirelessly to produce more, but they knew they were running out of time. The invaders' fleet was closing in on the final human stronghold, the city of New Haven, where the last remnants of Earth's military forces were gathering. The invaders had no idea what was coming for them. Meanwhile, the invaders were growing increasingly frustrated. Their forces had not expected the humans to fight back so fiercely. What had begun as a routine invasion had quickly spiraled into a battle that threatened their very survival. Despite their superior technology, the invaders' fleet was beginning to show signs of strain. Some ships had been severely damaged, and their commanders could no longer guarantee an easy victory. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Deep within the invader command ship, their leader began to question the wisdom of his orders. He had been told that humanity would crumble under the weight of their advanced weapons, but that had not happened. If anything, Earth's resistance was growing stronger with each passing day. The invaders had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. But the invaders were not about to give up. As the tension mounted, the human resistance knew they had one last chance to turn the tide in their favor. The final battle would take place at New Haven. Earth's forces had been bolstered with their new technologies, but the invaders were bringing everything they had. It would be the ultimate test, human ingenuity against an unstoppable force. The resistance knew they couldn't win by sheer force alone. They had to outsmart the invaders. The humans' secret weapon lay in their adaptability, their resourcefulness, and their ability to improvise. They had already turned the tide once with the Defiant. Now they needed to do it again. As the final battle drew closer, the resistance forces, led by the brilliant commander Ilara, began to prepare for what they knew would be the hardest fight of their lives. The plan was risky, but it was their only hope. The hypercharged weapons were their last line of defense, but they could only be used once before they had to recharge. If they didn't strike at the heart of the invader fleet, all would be lost. The human forces set a trap. Using a series of decoys and feints, they drew the invaders into a choke point, a region of space where their vast fleet would be forced to gather in tight formation. It was a risky move, but it was the only chance they had. The hypercharged weapons would be their final strike, and the only way to ensure they worked was to lure the invaders into their trap. As the invaders drew closer to New Haven, Commander Alara watched the sky, her eyes fixed on the massive ships descending through the clouds. It was now or never. Her heart raced. She had seen so much death, so much destruction, but she couldn't let fear rule her. The humans had made it this far. They had fought back against overwhelming odds, and now they would make their stand. The countdown began. The first hypercharged weapon fired, lighting up the sky with a burst of pure energy. The invaders' ships shattered under the blast, and for a brief moment it seemed as though the tide was finally turning in humanity's favor. But the invaders were not yet finished. They retaliated with everything they had, bringing down massive destruction to the human resistance. Commander Ilara's heart sank as she realized the scale of the battle to come. The invaders would not go down easily, but neither would humanity. The battle for New Haven was chaos, but it was not without purpose. The invaders, having suffered significant losses from the initial hypercharged weapons strike, were relentless in their pursuit of victory. Their fleet, although battered, remained an overwhelming force, their warships positioned to annihilate anything standing in their way. Yet, despite the destruction around them, humanity's resilience was becoming undeniable. In the heart of New Haven, Earth's remaining forces had gathered in a massive underground bunker, preparing for the inevitable. Commander Alara and her team were now at the helm of humanity's last-ditch effort. The hypercharge weapons had given them a taste of hope, but they couldn't rely on them for much longer. The countdown was closing in just a few hours before. The invaders would unleash their final, crushing assault. Earth's last weapon would not be lasers or bombs. It would be humanity's spirit, the very thing the invaders had underestimated. The plan was simple, yet dangerous. Earth's forces would use a combination of advanced guerrilla tactics, decoys, and one final, massive strike to cripple the invaders' flagship. This would, hopefully, be enough to destabilize their leadership and create an opening for a full-scale retreat. The catch: the strike would require an unthinkable sacrifice. The most advanced prototype weapon, codenamed the Nova Catalyst, had to be deployed at the heart of the invader fleet. A weapon designed to emit a pulse that would fry the invader, ship's systems rendering them powerless. It had never been tested. If it worked, humanity would have a fighting chance. If it failed, New Haven and everything humanity had fought for would be lost. There was no turning back. The plan was launched in the dead of night, when the invaders had grown complacent, believing victory was certain. In the sky, flares from the decoys lit up the atmosphere, making it appear as though Earth's defenses were crumbling under the weight of the invaders' assault. Ships took to the skies, firing at anything that moved, while others infiltrated the invaders' lines, creating a path for the strike force to advance. Commander Alara was at the heart of it all, her nerves a tense wire of anticipation. She watched as the decoy explosions rippled across the sky, pulling the invaders' focus away from the real strike force. She didn't need to see the damage being done to know what was happening. The time for hope was over. Now it was all about action. She pushed forward, leading her squad of soldiers, technicians, and engineers who had volunteered for this final mission, hours before the strike. Ilara gathered her team for a final briefing. "We've come this far because we refuse to back down. Tonight, we fight with everything we have. The invaders may have the technology, but they will never have the heart to match us. This is our home, and we'll defend it until the last breath." The team was ready. They knew what they were about to face. The battle ahead wasn't just against invaders from another galaxy. It was a test of everything humanity had built, everything it had become. The Nova Catalyst would be humanity's final stand as they made their way towards the heart of the invaders' fleet. They encountered resistance, but it was nothing like before. The invaders were more desperate now, their desperation evident in their frantic attempts to stop the human forces. The true nature of the invaders' fear became clear. They were no longer the conquerors they had once been. Now, they were simply trying to survive. But humanity didn't give them that luxury. The final assault began with an explosion that split the sky wide open. A team of engineers, working under Ilara's command, activated the Nova Catalyst, sending waves of electromagnetic pulses across the invader fleet. In that instant, everything changed. The invader ships went dark. Hundreds of them massive, impenetrable warships stopped moving, their weapon systems frozen in place. The invaders, once masters of the battlefield, found themselves powerless against the force they had so carelessly ignored. With the strike force moving in, the final blow was delivered. The Nova Catalyst had worked. Elara and her team rushed to the control center, knowing the tide had turned. With the Invaders' fleet disabled, Earth's forces launched a full-scale counterattack. Their technology, now adapted to counter the Invaders' tactics, gave them an edge they had never had before. The Invaders' lines began to fracture, their ships falling from the sky like broken stars. But the battle was far from over. As the final wave of Invaders began to fall back, one last ship remained, the Invaders' flagship, still operational, though weakened. Its captain, the one who had led the assault against humanity, refused to surrender. This was the last test of Earth's resilience. The human forces, having seen their strength, gathered for one final strike. Elara knew that if they didn't finish it now, the Invaders would regroup and return. This was their only chance to ensure the survival of their planet. They charged, knowing the risks, and with a final push, the flagship was brought to its knees. Its shields failed. The ship burned in the sky. The battle was won. Earth had triumphed, not because they were stronger or had better technology, but because they had something the Invaders never understood: unity, resilience, and the will to survive at any cost. Humanity had proven once and for all that no one could ever take their home away. The Invaders had learned the hard way that humans were not to be underestimated. And as Earth's forces stood victorious, they knew that, though this battle was over, the fight to protect their world would never truly end. The final stand had been made. Earth was free. The aftermath of the battle was a scene of both triumph and devastation. New Haven, the heart of humanity's last defense, was a city in ruins. Its streets, once bustling with life, were now scarred by the remnants of explosions and shattered glass. The air was thick with smoke, and the once great skyline was barely recognizable. Yet amidst the destruction, a powerful sense of victory began to rise. Humans had done what no one thought possible. They had survived. They had won. Commander Elara stood on the ruins of what had once been a thriving hub of human civilization. She looked out over the battlefield, her face smeared with ash, her body exhausted, but her spirit unbroken. The Invaders had been driven back, but at what cost? Countless lives had been lost, cities had been torn apart, and the world would never be the same again. The Invader fleet, now in retreat, had taken heavy losses. Their flagship, once a symbol of their overwhelming power, now drifted through space, a charred, broken shell of its former self. The remaining Invader ships scattered, fleeing from Earth as their command structure crumbled. The leader of the Invaders, once so certain of their victory, was now facing a crushing defeat. His forces had been shattered by the very species they had underestimated. But despite the human victory, Elara knew the war was not truly over. The Invaders had been pushed back, yes, but they were not gone. Their retreat was only temporary. Earth had sent a clear message, but Elara couldn't help but wonder, would the Invaders return? Would they ever stop, now that they knew humans had the strength to fight back? In the quiet moments after the battle, Earth's leaders convened to assess the damage. Across the world, nations began to rebuild, but the scars of war ran deep. Humanity had proven its resilience, but it had also paid a steep price for that resilience. Entire populations had been displaced, cities destroyed, and countless lives lost in the fight for survival. The victory felt bittersweet. Elara's thoughts turned to those who had fought beside her, the soldiers, the engineers, the civilians who had refused to give up, even when the odds were stacked against them. They were the true heroes of this story. They were the ones who had sacrificed everything for the future of their world. Without them, victory would not have been possible. The world's leaders spoke of rebuilding, of starting anew. But Allah knew that things could never be the same again. The earth that had once been peaceful, unaware of the dangers lurking in the vast expanse of the galaxy, was now forever changed. The scars of the war would remain physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Humanity had learned the harsh truth. Peace could be shattered at any moment, and the universe was full of threats that no one could predict. As the rebuilding process began, a new sense of purpose emerged among the people of Earth. They were no longer just survivors, they were warriors, and their place in the cosmos had been irrevocably altered. The universe was vast, and they had only just begun to understand the true dangers that lay beyond their world. The invaders had been only one of many forces out there, and humanity had learned the hard way that their strength was their greatest asset. But Alara couldn't help but feel a gnawing unease. The invaders had been defeated, but they had not been destroyed. What if they returned with greater numbers, better weapons, or a more ruthless strategy? What if there were other species out there, watching Earth's victory, preparing their own invasion? The price of underestimating humans had been steep for the invaders, but the price of underestimating the vastness of the universe was one humanity would now have to pay. Earth had shown its strength, but it had also revealed its vulnerability. No longer would humanity live in the comfort of ignorance, unaware of the dangers lurking beyond the stars. They had survived this war, but could they survive the next? As Alara looked up at the sky, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. The invaders had learned to fear humanity, but in doing so, they had unlocked a new chapter in the story of Earth's existence. A chapter where humans would have to confront not just invaders, but the very nature of their place in the universe. The victory was sweet, but the reality was clear. The true battle had only just begun. Humanity's story was now one of survival, of resilience, and of preparing for the next challenge. The price of underestimating humans had been paid by the invaders, but for Earth, the cost was much higher than anyone could have imagined. The future was uncertain, and the universe had no mercy. But for Alara and the rest of humanity, one thing was certain: they would never stop fighting, no matter the cost.